So really, really happy to get back after almost 2 weeks. It seems like a long time because of Navratri and other things happening. So, Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavatam Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vridavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandathami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullara Vindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradeepaha Sarvopanishado Gavaha Dogdha Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Geetamritam Mahat Vasude Vasutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So we are indeed coming to the end of the 5th chapter. It, as always, every chapter has its own charm. And this chapter particularly is amazing because it really introduces us to the path of the Jnana Marga. It is taking us from what is Karma Yoga, which was expounded in the 3rd and the 4th chapters. And now, in this chapter, it is about Karma Sannyasa Yoga. So, as always, we just want to do a little short introduction to it, which is the chapter starts with a question, and it's a very advanced question actually, and it's also a question which is different from what was asked in the 3rd chapter. So maybe some a kind of a homework assignment, if you want to take, is really understanding what was the difference in the question at the beginning of the 3rd chapter and in the beginning of this 5th chapter. So something to think about, which you can reflect upon, because there is a difference. It may seem very similar, but there is a difference. You will see that here, he's actually, the question that was asked is, Arjuna is asking Krishna, Krishna, why are you telling me that there are 2 paths? One path is you're saying I have to renounce my actions. And another path is that I have to perform karma yoga. So Krishna actually tells him that no, you choose the path of karma yoga. So it's interesting with this question, the way Krishna is answering Arjuna. Typically when we are dealing with our own children, right? And when there is a choice of 2 things, we always tell them, push yourself, go for the higher goal. Don't settle for something which is small, correct? That's what we say. But here, when Arjuna is asking, hey, Krishna, I have this two paths. One is, completely become the sannyasi. And the second one is I actually go to the field and do what I have to do. So you would think that Krishna, being the mother or the father, would tell him, no, 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 you're right, Arjuna, just go to the Himalayas. All this whole life is an illusion. It's not real. Don't worry about it, right? No, he doesn't tell him that. He says, no, Arjuna, you stay back. It looks like, Krishna is putting the brakes now. He's saying, no, 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 you stay below, you do what you have to do, right? Now, why does he do that? Why does he have to tell Arjuna, to take the lower path, so-called lower path? Because I think our philosophy, and that's such a beauty of Sanatana Dharma, which on one hand will give you all the stages of life on how we have to evolve. But it is also very realistic, very practical. It's not very, what should I say, unrealistic goals. It's extremely realistic. It's very pragmatic. It really tells us where we are and who we are. It's constantly asking us to analyze that. And that is what Krishna is telling Arjuna here, that Krishna, you have come here with your own baggage. You are who you are today based on everything that you've accomplished. Why don't you try to first understand that and fulfill your duties? And that's why we have this path of Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is really the most practical sadhana, if you will, for many of us, where I understand who I am, I fulfill who I am to the best of its ability, and then move on. And that's what Krishna is telling Arjuna here too. Arjuna, you're a warrior, you try to do the best you can, but I will give you what the next path looks like. And that is why in this chapter, you see, he tries to explain to him who is a sannyasi, what does he do, and etc. All those things. So he does that. So that's why this fifth chapter is very important, because it's a kind of a transition from Karma Yoga to Jnana Yoga. And if we understand this, our next chapter, which is coming up, which is the sixth chapter, it is all about meditation. And again, this is the beauty of Sanatana Dharma, where we are given all this information. We have to digest this information, think through it, and only then get into something as profound as meditation. And when we come to sixth chapter, of course, we will explain exactly how do you define meditation and why we need this knowledge before we do it. So with that, our reflection time today is actually based on the question that Meena brought up 2 weeks ago. We always talk about who is a happy man, happy person. Have we really seen such people? How do they look like? And, do they live in our midst? Or is there an exalted place where they live? Or you really have to go only to the Himalayas and see that that's where they live. So I want to ask you that question in your definition, or have you met somebody who is extremely happy and joyful and who sort of, who's the most ideal role model for us? What are your thoughts?
You want me to give you an answer?
Yes, of course.
Sunitha ji.
Thank you. Thank you for that great compliment. But you put a huge bar for me now. I think I know where I have to go.
You are.
I mean, Yes, I am happy. I'm extremely happy even now. But have I? I have a long way to go to really reach that state. And you will see this whole lecture today is going to be a lot on what is really happiness. And you may think, haven't don't we know what happiness is? But we see that we really don't know what is happiness. Otherwise, we'd be there. So, any other question, thoughts, or any examples of people in your own? Geeta, your mother, I would say she is a very happy person, right?
I guess so. Yeah. When
No,
they reach that age, automatically it comes. That was my next question. I was just going to ask you. In the younger days, we are saying, "Do your karma, karma, do your karma." So when they grow up and when their responsibilities are over, so automatically the karma goes away. The next stage automatically comes. That's what I'm thinking. It's my. Won't it happen that way automatically?
well, the corollary. Have you always seen people who are older to be always happy? That is the question to ask.
Mm.
And also, haven't we seen a lot of happy children? You know, happiness we've seen at different ages, actually.
No,
But you're right. You're
I
right. That
don't
is
mean happiness. I mean karma. I'm just, they have their own karma to do at that age. At different age, they have different karmas which they have to fulfill or do. So once that karma stage is all over, slowly it goes to the next stage. That's what I'm thinking. Slowly
yeah,
we grow up.
right. If you fulfill your duties and everything in a contented fashion, even as I'm fulfilling, I'm contented that I've done it, then that automatically leads you to the next stage of being there. Yeah. That contentment and satisfaction is needed when I fulfill every duty. So, always this reflection for us, the question is, what are we seeking in life? Is it pleasure or happiness? That really determines a lot on, am I happy or not? You know, what do you think? What are we seeking in life in general? We may be seeking something, truly heart of hearts, maybe we may be seeking something, but we get something and we think that is happiness. Correct? So, is it pleasure or happiness? Now, what is the difference between the two?
Is happiness permanent or
Mm-hmm.
pleasure may be temporary? I don't know.
No, you hit the nail on the head. Pleasure is temporary and happiness is permanent.
Oh,
Correct.
okay.
Yes, very good.
Uh,
Geeta, I think I need to have a Jeopardy or a Kahoot game, right?
mm,
You're right. Pleasure is temporary, happiness is permanent. But when we are seeking things outside through our five sense organs, we hit upon some things and we are very happy. So this example I gave last time, which is this balloon. For a child, when you blow up the balloon and show this big thing, the child's eyes, you see, it's like just lights up, right? But when the balloon pops, the child is not very happy. So the idea being that if I can tell the child, of course, you don't want to, I can see Bina and Ala, her thing with her grandson, which is, can you imagine even telling your grandson, you know what, this balloon is going to pop. So you don't want to say that, right? And that's the way it is with us. We don't want that pleasure to stop. But as we grow older, we have to recognize that pleasures will stop, like balloons will pop, but and this is all it's a contact mechanism. The minute our sense organs contact some things, and it gives us some pleasure or whatever, we have to recognize, hey, that's going to stop someday, right? So then we have to recognize what is it that I'm really seeking for. And these two examples, I discussed it 2 weeks ago, but I think many of you were not there, but wanted to run that again. So when I'm seeking pleasure, it is like going on this roller coaster. It's really a great analogy, because life is really like roller coaster, and it is really our choice whether I want to, even as I'm sitting on that roller coaster, do I want to scream and, say, oh, great, and all that, or I just enjoy what is going on? The roller coaster analogy is good because all the pleasures are coming at such fast speed. But in our life, that same roller coaster is spread out, right? But we don't recognize that. But that is the whole idea, is, do I really, put my hands up and, just scream and enjoy that ride? Or do I just sit and just watch out and watch as if I know that I'm on a roller coaster, that I am going to go down at some point? So can I just smile and just enjoy the ride? That's the whole idea behind this analogy. So that's really, there's so much of psychology that has been built into this roller coasters, amount of science. It's literally people who have done PhDs and everything. They are the ones who design a lot of these roller coasters, because they look at this emotional psychology and they have tried to show how this, literally they've understood in life, what is causing you this emotion, what is causing you this pleasure. They put all this into this roller coasters and they make it sort of fun and this, but at the end of the day, our life is really nothing but roller coaster. So then the question comes is, are there really people who experience true happiness? And the answer is yes. The answer is there are people who experience true happiness, which is why we are also here in this Gita class trying to understand that. And it starts with already from the shloka 21, where, Krishna reminds Arjuna that Bahya Sparsheshu Asakta Atma Vindati Atmani Yat Sukham Sa Brahma Sa Yoga Yuktatma Sukham Akshayam Ashnute. So he's telling Arjuna that the only way one can be happy is where I make my mind independent of my contact. So even as some object is coming to my in my radar, I have to find myself being alert. It's like when you go down, you've gone to this Luray caverns, like in Louisiana, right? Caverns or anything.
Kentucky.
Kentucky, exactly. Kentucky, not Louisiana, Kentucky. And, you go there with, in the past, of course, people would maybe have some lights, on the head or something, so you can actually see where you're going down, right? And now, of course, you can just use your phone, your your phone has a torchlight, your torchlight, I'm saying, using an Indian word, your flashlight, and you can see it. So our mind has to be alert. It's the headlights. The headlights has to be on in our mind, even as I'm enjoying something. I have to recognize that these sense objects, it is great, but it is not going to last. So that's what he's trying to say. Bahya Sparsheshu, the mind independent of external contacts, recognize when it is independent of that sense of objects. It through this knowledge which we are studying so far, and which will constantly keep coming up on and on and on, which is that pleasure I'm seeking outside is temporary. I think that I'm seeking is happiness, but that happiness is actually my own true nature. And if that happiness is my true nature, And if I'm convinced about it, and if I have spent enough time reflecting upon it and meditating upon it, then whatever I seek outside, I will really enjoy it because I know that is temporary and I put my attention to it and I withdraw it. So the headlines for me is that alertness, which I practice in my day-to-day world, in and through everything I'm doing. I see some things which is giving me pleasure. I see some things which is giving me sorrow also, but I recognize the temporariness of it in and through what I'm going through it. That's the idea behind what the shloka is trying to say, that when I do that, I really can understand what ultimate bliss really means. So that's the joy of being in that state. So the joy of independence from objects is actually the true happiness. So we, on the other hand, we seek that pleasure from these three things, whether it is, a promotion. In the beginning, we're looking at small things for pleasures, right? So these pictures I showed you before. Depending upon where I am, for many of us, it could be in these objects that causes pleasure. Then we graduate to something where possession gives me pleasure. Finally, we get to a thing where only position in the sense of promotions and all those things. But ultimately, what the fifth chapter is telling us in the shloka is a person who is independent of all these sense objects doesn't mean that that person is totally going to give it up and stay in one room free of all this. No, that is not what he's saying. But basically, it is about in and through everything, enjoying it for what it is, but recognizing the temporariness. So I will skip this one. We had talked about 3 weeks ago. And of course, the ultimate idea is that happiness, which is truly ours, is so many zeros, much more than this one MHU, which is one unit of happiness that I might get from our sense objects. Okay. So then the question might come as, why is the wise person not attracted to objects of pleasure? So, it's an evolution, right? In the beginning, as I showed, we go through pleasures of very of immediate thing, like, the roller coaster ride, or somebody who is into drugs or into smoking, or, those kind of things. Then you actually graduate to other kinds of pleasures, maybe something where you have, I'm giving you very, very simple examples, but you can relate to it, which is, then, it may be food, which is, which gives you a little more, because you can hold on to a candy, for example, in your mouth for a long time, or whatever, correct? But food is also addictive, right? And I've given you my own personal story of M&Ms. I really love M&M, peanut M&Ms. Thank God there is no peanut M&Ms here, but of course there are supermarkets. If you go, my vasana will pull towards it. There was a time where I was so attracted to this M&M, peanut M&Ms. But food can be addictive. Other things, our own Facebook, tweets, a lot of these things can be addictive. But again, the wise is not very attracted, again, because they recognize that these things do have its own issues. That's why yehi samsparshaja bhogaha dukkha yonaya evate adyantavanta kaunteya teshu ramate buddhaha. So buddhaha, the wise person, recognizes that all these sense objects, samsparshaja bhogaha, the pleasures, they are wombs of sorrow. They don't mince words. The words are carefully chosen here. Wombs of sorrow, which is ridden with sorrows, and they have a beginning and an end. So that's basically, we saw that. And this is just an example of how we mix our happiness and pleasure, going back to the theme of happiness and pleasure, we think we get happiness from all these objects. And I just particularly chose something which is high-end pleasures here, whether it's Starbucks, not regular coffee, not like a Saravana Bhavan coffee, but something Starbucks. Who knows, maybe a new CEO of Starbucks will, who's in South Indian, will introduce filter coffee, maybe. And then, so we mix the happiness and pleasure constantly. So this shloka is trying to remind us that understand this, and this is the only way you will develop vairagya. So that is the thing. Vairagya is the only way to conquer this aspect of it. Vairagya means to recognize that, to have my alertness. So we have this viveka and vairagya. Viveka is understanding the difference between what is real and what is unreal, what is temporary, what is impermanent. That is viveka. Vairagya is actually implementation. So again, we are creatures where we are good in analyzing, correct? We can analyze very well, but implementation is the biggest problem. So that is why vairagya is so very important. I recognize this. Now, can I put for myself a journal or whatever everybody has? Everyone has different ways of monitoring their own pleasures versus happiness, part of it. And so to develop that vairagya is what the shloka is asking. So it's samsparshaja bhogaha, which is, he's trying to say that the samsparsha, so sense organs require two things. They have to have the sense objects and the sense organs, both of them functioning really well. Samsparsha, well in contact. Actually, I don't know if I'll be able to get to it today because I really want to finish all the way up to 26 shloka today. But maybe I'll see, I have a few slides and I'll explain at that time what the samsparshaja bhogaha means. But Shankaracharya, Bhagavan Shankaracharya, he reminds that this kind of enjoyments is worse than even a poison of a cobra. A cobra's poison, at least it will enter the body and it will kill that person, right? But for us, our attachment to all these things are so strong that it keeps on killing us from one birth to another birth. It is that womb of sorrow. It is pushing us again and again into the samsara. And we don't even recognize that, when we are coming into this birth, we think we're coming here to enjoy, and I think Viveka Chudami, there are beautiful shlokas on this. I don't want to quote them, all of them, but it basically is, idea is we are going through a lot more pain. We don't recognize that. And it is worse than the poison of the cobra. So I'm sure, Geeta, you will think about, so what does that mean then? Why is a person not attracted? Is he really trying to suppress his desires? Because that's another thing we sometimes tell our children, we try to control them, saying that, okay, don't give this, don't give that, right? So is he really trying to suppress his desires? Not really. They have very clear, because they have been in this knowledge. And that is the thing for us too, is with the knowledge that we're gaining, hopefully the next day, the next minute, we will truly understand that these objects have a beginning and they have an end. Always I have to remind, they have a beginning, they have an end. They have a beginning, they have an end. When I recognize that, then I won't get too attracted to it, too attached to it. Actually, attachment is a better word here. I'm not attached to the objects all the time. I enjoy it, and I say, okay, you've come. Goodbye. I wish I could say that. Goodbye, now you can go, and I will leave me in peace, or something like that.
I have a
So
question.
yeah, go ahead.
No, when we when we see a gulab jamun, so we say we should enjoy it, right? And then we want to forget it. On the other hand, when the gulab jamun is there, we keep saying, no, it's not good for me. I shouldn't eat. There are two kinds the mind works. One side we say, oh, enjoy it, get the happiness out of it, and then forget about it. The other side we say, don't use that will provide happiness, but don't eat it, or something like that. There are two controversial thoughts in mind, isn't it?
Yeah, they're not two controversial thoughts. They will take one step. Imagine there are two rungs of a ladder, the first one, for example, you said, enjoy it and then leave it. And the second one you said is don't enjoy it because it's not good for you. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
So
Is that
let's say,
suppression? Okay, go ahead.
so it is actually one leading to another. So you have to first enjoy it. Okay. When something comes to it, you enjoy it. The problem for us is when I have the gulab jamun in front of me, I mean, when we have gulab jamuns, I don't have a gulab jamun where I go to the refrigerator, I open it, I take this one gulab jamun, I go to a secluded place and I say, gulab jamun, I'm going to have a relationship with you now. Let's just spend this time and let me just enjoy it. Do you think that happens? No, I don't think that happens most of the time. We have to be honest, 95% of the time it doesn't happen because I have gulab jamun in a party, or I have gulab jamun when I'm tired in the evening, and or I have a gulab jamun when I'm watching something. I never have a good relationship with that gulab jamun. I've spent so much of time making it, but I don't have that. At that moment in time, even let's say that you did find a secluded spot and you're enjoying that gulab jamun, where is your mind at that time? The mind at that moment, even as I'm putting that morsel into my mouth, I'm thinking, oh, you know what? The gulab jamun that Ganga made was much better than what I made. So every moment I'm comparing, I'm not putting my mind into it. So if I do at that moment 100% I am with the gulab jamun, that's it. I go to the second step and I tell myself, you know what? Yeah, this gave me pleasure, but do I really want it? It automatically you go to the second step. But we don't, even the first step itself, we have a major problem. We don't put our mind to it and we don't enjoy it for what it is.
What if we enjoy and keep ourselves, okay, I enjoyed it, I'm done, I'll go to the next stage. What if we think of it that way? We'll still eat the gulab jamun, enjoy it, I'm done, I enjoyed it, I liked it, that's it. I'll go to the next step.
That is, not to oversimplify what we are studying, that is exactly what Krishna is trying to tell us. Krishna, the first part of it is like the karma yoga, the second part is the jnana yoga, He says, you have been given something for which you have to fulfill and get to a state of contentment. So if I get that gulab jamun and I really enjoy it, literally with full attention in it, 100%, there is no problem at all. There's actually no problem because I recognize that this gulab jamun has come to me. I'm enjoying it. It's going to be temporary. Tomorrow, I'm not going to have the gulab jamun. All those things will automatically come about, Any other thoughts or anybody wants to does that make sense?
Sunitha ji?
Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting topic. We are talking about gulab jamun.
Now he wants to have gulab jamun.
I know it's late in the night for you.
So what I was thinking about this is gulab jamun comes in front of me, and I know that if I eat that, it is going to be a temporary pleasure for the tongue, but I'm not going to I'm clear that I am not going to get any happiness out of it. And if I keep that thinking in mind, I think I'm not going to attach to it. I'll eat, but I'll not get attached to it. And slowly, probably, if I'm considering that I don't have any health issue related to gulab jamun, if there is health issue, then it is easy. I don't need to eat that. But I don't have health issue, then I eat, but I know that I'm not going to get happiness out of it. If that conviction is very clear, I think even if you eat, it is not going to be affect.
Correct. Exactly. It's a very deep thing. I mean, this question is not a trivial one, actually, like Amlan said just now, if I know that happiness, that I'm not getting the happiness out of it, but I'm still doing it mainly because I have a vasana for it. I have a vasana, and that is why I'm indulging in it. And the only way sometimes to get rid of a vasana is not by suppressing it, but by in and through. So even as I'm going through the motion of it, my mind, and this one, and that is why I said the headlights has to be on all the time. If I'm alert that I'm doing it because I have a vasana for it, and the only way I can get through this is by through my mind analysis. I enjoy it and I'm willing to give it up. Then only I can exhaust that vasana.
Yeah, the problem comes when we eat and we like the taste and keep thinking about it. Oh, it is so tasty. It is so tasty. When I'm going to get the next one? So next one, and another one is not enough. Then I need two. Then I need to, then greed comes into that. Then it is a never-ending process, basically. So that's the problem. So we have to put a conviction in the before that I am not going to get any happiness out of it with 100% conviction. Then you eat one and forget it.
Exactly. Exactly. That has to be the mantra. I'm not going to get any happiness out of it. I'm not going to. I mean.
Then why eat gulab jamun? We can eat anything on the table, anything on the plate.
Exactly. That's the point. That's why we should be eating only what is good for our body and what is needed for our body. We should not be eating anything which our tongue likes it. That's basically, but it is very hard to. It is easy to say. It is very hard to do.
No, this is why, I mean, Bhagavad Gita's every shloka has all that prescription for us. The prescription is don't have likes and dislikes. To answer your question, Gita, why can't I this one? Anything that comes to me, I'll take it. Just a simple thing, I'm staying here in the ashram here. We go to the Annakshetra. I don't think about, I wish today, they make that wonderful puris that they made that day or whatever. I go there, whatever they put on my plate, I enjoy, I come out. I don't say that this idli was too hard or this was too soft or anything. This is my prarabdha. Today I got this, I enjoy it and I just come out, If we have that, and I just gave that as an example of an ashram.
But your mind indirectly tells you that idli was hard.
That's okay. That is because the intellect cannot be without judging something, correct?
Right.
It will judge and say this idli was hard or soft or whatever. But you're right. That also is one step along the way. One step along the way. At the next step, you'd be just so grateful that you had something to eat,
So is that the reason? Is that the reason why you said first, if you have vairagya, then all these doesn't come into picture at all?
Exactly.
Right?
You're 100% exactly. And like our sannyasis, for sannyasis, the thing is they have to go and always get bhiksha. Bhiksha is the only way they get food. When they take that kamandalu and they go to different homes, and this is of course I'm talking about in Himalayas or anything, or in the olden days, whatever they go to a house and the lady puts this one, they don't go and tell them, okay, did you make today that wonderful rasam that you made that day? No. They eat whatever comes on the plate, right? It's a great advanced level of thinking, actually. So,
Sunitha
Meena,
ji,
you
one another side of the story is I heard from Sharda aunty about Sri Sri Chinmayananda Guruji, basically, that he used to, when he was eating, he used to even tell that in the summer, the tamarind is not cooked for 15 minutes. So
right.
he was so mindful about eating, and
Yes,
the point he was making is he is mindful about eating, but he is not attached to it.
correct,
So he doesn't
correct,
have the greed towards that.
correct.
So that's what
And
Shanti explained once, that it is
yes, and
what you're doing,
exactly
be mindful thing to do, like eating
right.
mindful.
Eating mindful, but I remember her telling once also about how, when the mustard seeds were black or burnt, correct? So he pointed that out, not because the fact that he didn't enjoy it or something, but also to show the perfection that needs to be had when I'm spending the time on a particular task. So when I'm cooking, I have to be cooking, right? Like in this chapter, it's a fifth chapter. There's a beaut naiva kinchit karomiti, that shloka shrunvan sprishan. When I'm doing something, I do only that. All these are pointers to incorporate in our lives. Have no likes or dislikes. Focus your attention where, bring all your attention, all the five sense organs to one place, while I'm eating. And we tell our children that, but now it has become, our life has become like that, where as I'm eating, I have to see what text has come for me, or, my ears are listening to the text. I keep my notifications on, our lives have become like that. We have to change so this is the thing I was trying to show about the science of happiness, which the shloka is really getting to is, so why would we say that there's no joy in outside objects at all, Of course there is joy. Somebody may say, of course there is joy. Of course there is happiness, you know. And another question is, do you really want to have happiness or sorrow? For this, these are just questions related to happiness. When I'm having something, why would I have a food which is burnt or something like that? That's in a very simplistic sense. In anything and everything. So first of all, do I, uh, do I not seek objects because there's no happiness? No, I do seek objects, and I do need happiness from all this. And the second thing is that, is it okay that I have it now, but I don't have it later? No, I do want to have it always, right? Always I want to have this. This is why we are, one thing when I have, immediately I change it and I want to have something else. I get tired of things because I'm constantly thinking that happiness is in the objects, right? So this is something also we try to do that. So we know that happiness is got by the contact of sense objects. Here I'm saying happiness meaning joy. But then the question is, this is an important question, when does this objects really give us happiness? Is it when I'm
Sense
enjoying
organs.
it? What is that?
When it gives pleasure to sense organs.
When it gives objects, when it gives pleasure to the sense, or exactly. So there is only when the sense organs contacts the objects, when that gulab jamun touches my tongue, only then it gives me happiness, right? But have we ever thought about how much goes into that ultimate step? There is so much is involved in ultimately that sense object giving me happiness, and this is the whole sort of a mechanism of science of happiness, which we need to think about, because to get that happiness out of that gulab jamun touching my tongue and getting it, one thing which is very important is my sense organs must be in a healthy condition, right? What, because of COVID, suddenly I've lost the sense of taste. the gulab jamun, you have prepared it so well, but ultimately I'm not able to enjoy it because I don't have, my organs is not in good condition. In Trigdarsha Vivek also we had this thing about, so it has to do that. Second thing is, the object must be in a good condition. What if the gulab jamun was very soft on the outside, but inside it is hard, it is not cooked, right? That is also very important. So so many factors has to be there. Another thing, suppose today, suppose you give a gulab jamun to a 5-year-old, okay? And you give a gulab jamun to a 50-year-old. A 50-year-old may enjoy it much more than a 5-year-old. So when you give, the object is also, a 50-year-old will enjoy it more than a 5-year-old. Yes, exactly. I wanted to make sure I said it right. So happiness, there is so much going on in here. Sense objects, sense organs has to be good. Sense objects at this one, the timing has to be right. So another one, which I said when I gave you this example of taking that gulab jamun, sitting in a secluded spot and enjoying it, the mind must be ready for it. What if just that morning or that afternoon somebody told me something that will linger in my mind? All these things everything has to be in a proper fashion. That means everything must be aligned. Only then I will really have, and that the first stage, Gita, which you talked about, which is my enjoyment with the object, So I can go on and on about just that part of it, but like I said, it's so very important to understand that mechanism of happiness for everything to happen. Amlan is smiling. You have something to share, Amlan?
This is very nice explanation he gave. Actually, the object gives happiness is a total illusion, actually, because it has to have all these factors. So gulab jamun, if it is it can give happiness, if it has any power of giving happiness, it will give happiness irrespective of any situation. But it doesn't. It needs all these things to be aligned to give happiness. That clearly tells mathematically that object cannot give happiness. It is clear, clearly.
Exactly. And that is exactly why wise people, it goes back to that first question I had. Why is it that wise people don't this one? So he recognizes that happiness is not in the objects and they stay away. So seekers of knowledge, they stay away and they recognize that happiness is within me. I have that infinite possibility to enjoy that happiness. So this is the what that this question is saying. So reflect. Yehi samsparshaja bhogaha. So reflection on this is very important. Reflect. Indulging in pleasure, nobody has become healthy, wealthy, or wise. And that is why seekers of knowledge, they stay away from this. Okay. So very important shloka from that point, yehi samsparshaja bhogaha, dukkha yonaya, they all wombs of sorrow, they have adi and anta, they have beginning and an end. So in fact, this Kaunteya, na teshu bhogeshu ramate buddha viveki avagata paramartha, this is Bhagavan Shankaracharya's bhashya, So, atyanta mudhanam evahi vishayeshu ratihi drishyate yatha pashu prabhritinam. It says, we are like animals, pashuhu, only animals are like that. And whereas we, on the other hand, the wise people are much more wiser and they don't undergo, they don't indulge in this. So that's the whole.
Before you go to the next shloka, so we are talking about only the gulab jamun and the tongue, but this applies to all the other sense organs, like even the eyes, like watching movie, is the same thing. There's the illusion that we get happiness, like by touch. whatever other sense organ, is all basically illusion.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of factors has to be aligned to get that happiness situation to be created.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, ultimately, they're all nothing but objects of pleasure. That also, sometimes somebody may say, you know what, and this is again something we have had a discussion in a study group too, nowadays I really don't want to go to restaurants and everything. I'm okay sitting at home. But then if I'm sitting at home, what am I doing? Am I just getting stuff from the Indian stores and having the same thing at home? I'm not going to the restaurants. So, or I don't see movies or anything these days. But you know what? Nowadays with this Amazon Prime or Netflix and all that, you can get hooked. You can get totally, the vasana is so strong. It's not as if it goes away. I have to be so careful of where that vasana is now directing its attention to. So in this next shloka, it's another nice one where he says about that mind, how it rushes out, and how there are two major obstacles for that mind, and that is desire and anger. So, Shaknoti haiva yah sodum prak sharira vimokshanat kama krodhot bhavam vegam. So, yukta sasukhi naraha. So, here that word sasukhi sayuktaha. In the previous shloka, I talked about how we are like animals when we are going for these objects of pleasures. But here he says, he is that happy person who is yuktaha, who is completely in control. And, he who is able, while still here, to withstand before the liberation from the death, from the body. So even as his Sukshma Sharira is getting out of this body, when the body is given up, right? What are the two things that he has to conquer? Desire and anger. Two big things. So desire, of course, in Bhajagovindam, we talked about how anger is also nothing but desire in a different form. Because if you don't, and again, second chapter, Shloka 60, 61, the ladder of fall, it starts with, if I don't get something, then I get angry, right? So ultimately it's desire. But here, this just suddenly it just struck me now, which is desire, we cannot see it, correct? But anger, we can. Anger, we can, like this example Swami Chimananda also gives, how this guy, he gets up in the morning and his wife gives him some breakfast, upma or something like that. And she leaves out the salt. And then he goes to, he gets so angry that there was no salt in the upma. And with that anger, he goes to work, and then everybody, his co-workers are, he gets some upset. His boss gets upset with him. He comes back and he shouts, So that anger is something which is easily seen, but desire is not. So that is why desire and anger, I think, is put here. But the important thing here is also this other word, which is vegam. Vegam means, a great impulse or a force. It's like a storm, This is something which is again created by this combination of this desire and anger. All these typhoons and tornadoes, if you look at it, why are they? If it was only wind, it is okay, right? But in tornadoes, in this one, there is something else that happens. There is this big dust and everything together, and it creates a typhoon or the tornado, right? So that's the vegam which is there within us, which is due to actually this whole rajas, tamas, everything. And that's the whole idea, which is like a big warning, which we have to pay attention to, So again, as I said, sa sukhi, sa yuktaha, sa sukhi naraha is a person who recognizes that desire and anger is bad and has total control over it. Only such a person, prak sharira vimokshanat. Prag Sharira, before the liberation. Prag means before. Sharira, body. Vimokshanat. So before he dies, if he has in control, then such a person can really is a happy person. So it is like a catch-22 situation. You know, on one hand, I have to recognize that the happiness is within and do it. But the question is, if I redirect it inward, I really don't find joy without understanding it. So therefore, what Gita had suggested, the two-prong approach, you know, which is why I had this thing here, ladder. I have to be very firm on the bottom thing. It's not about putting my leg up. You know, you gave those two options, right? Gita, one is enjoying it, and then second one is giving up. But my leg has to be firm on the bottom ring, which is I have to totally understand why I'm doing it. Only then I can take that second step forward. If I don't do this, I'll be always, you know, my ladder is going to be shaky. My life is going to be shaky. So that is why have your headlights on while driving on winding roads. Our life is like this winding road, and I have to have that alertness all the time. And we don't do that, you know. We just go through life mechanically. We are on autopilot. And because you're on autopilot, we can be in trouble and we can, you know, fall off the cliff or something like that. So, which brings us to the second next shloka of 24. We had gone through this, so that's why I'm just revising it. So, Yonta Sukontara Ramaha, Yonta Sukontara Ramaha, Tathantar Jyotirevayaha, Sayogi Brahma Nirvanam, Brahma Bhuta Adhigachati. So, only that person, one who is happy within, one who rejoices within, the one who has found the happiness within himself or herself, and who recognizes that Jyoti, you know, again, the shloka is very deep, but for us to understand, the idea is that happiness, that consciousness, that Jyoti is within myself. Such a person, sa yogihi Brahma Nirvanam, attains that moksha. So that person attains moksha by understanding she or he is that ultimate bliss, that adhigachati, that person attains Brahma Bhuta by identifying with that Brahman. So such a person is completely joyful and attains that. So in shlokas 25, where he says, Labante Brahma Nirvanam, Vrishaya Kshina Kalmashaha, Chinna Dvaidha Yatat Manaha, Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. Such a person, you know, who attains absolute freedom, you know, those rishis, Rishayaha, Kshina Kalmashaha. That is, for them, they have their vasanas, their, you know, their desires totally have been totally destroyed. Chinna Dvaita Yathat Manaha, whose dualities, Chinna means who's been destroyed. Dvaitaha, you know, we are always living in this life of opposites. And Yatatmanaha, they are totally self-controlled. And Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha, such a person who has done all this, who are always looking for the welfare of everybody else. Now, why are we not able to do that? Because we are focused on many times on what is good for us and everything. But such a person, because they have totally no vasanas, constantly they're always smiling, always happy, always intent on helping others. This word will come again in chapter 12, where in chapter 12, Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha, Krishna talks about from a bhakti marga, the qualities of the person. So we'll quickly go through 26 because next week I want to give that. We'll of course summarize these shlokas, the last few shlokas again next week. But in 26, He says, Kama Krodho Viyuktanam Yatinam Yathachetasam Abhito Brahma Nirvanam Vartate Viditatmanam. So for those who are now free of this desire and anger, and those who have used their alertness and thinking to understand the temporariness of life, all we said, those who have totally controlled, for such a person, abhitaha brahma nirvanam vartate viditatmanam. Absolute freedom exists on both sides, here and there, for they have total clarity in the mind. They have complete clarity of mind. They have understood what this knowledge is taking them to. So clarity of mind, clarity of vision. And when that happens, then that leads them to moksha. So the ultimate goal of freedom for us is to recognize one who is completely free of that desire and anger. So in our closing shlokas, which will be which we'll discuss next week, it's a prelude to the 6th chapter. So the idea is, if I have this knowledge very clearly in my mind, then my meditation will be very good. So meditation is actually the only way, ultimately, for us to be in tune with that absolute Brahman, which is being talked about in Shloka 26. And for that one, Lord Krishna is just going to give us 3 shlokas in this chapter to just whet our appetite for why you should come back for the 6th chapter. So for that one, we will see that next week. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om purnamada purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnameva vashishyate. Om shanti shanti shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Let me stop the live stream.